Yay! We found the button! I hope you can hear me. It's been a funny one today. It's a bit hurry up and wait. You think you're ready to go? Technology undermines you. I hope you're well, lovelies, wherever you are in the world. Great you can hear me. Yeah, we're gonna have a fun one. Because it takes endorsement, it takes community, it takes collaboration. In short, it takes a village! Hello, that kind of worked. I hope you're doing well. We've got some friends in tonight. Well, of course, we have Josephine Baird. It's gonna be incredible. I'm very excited. I know there's a few newbies in here tonight, so I'll do the standard spiel. I'm trying to get a little bit quicker with it every week. We have some new things happening here. Yes, so I demonetize as much as I can. Subs are always gratefully received. They did go towards a really pretty good, I thought, streaming laptop with Windows rather than Mac, and it doesn't like me. We did it last week. We had some problems with sound, and now it doesn't want to do a split cam. So I'll work on that, and we'll get back to you. But back to Mac. Back in Mac tonight. So yeah, I demonetize because Twitch actively promotes parasocialism, essentially. There is a command if you want to have a look at a peer-reviewed scientific paper, you can do that. I'd rather you didn't right now, just watch this, but it does encourage me saying, hey, I really like you, and you giving me money, and everyone ends up being unhappy with that, apparently, because boundaries and shit. I hope that's alright. You won't get much if you sub. I actively discourage you from doing that. You'll get some emojis. Nobody gets ads. We go on a break when there's a commercial break. Yeah, so it's lovely if you want to support, but I'd rather you give that to charity. Originally, I wanted to give 50% of my income. After Jeff takes this bit, after tax, it's not very much. It wasn't worth it for someone who streams once a week. There's another reason not to subscribe. I have Streamily. It has autographs on it. It's great. If you want something, you can have something physical. You could give me money and get something physical for that, and I feel very comfortable with that relationship. That is on a loop, so we're gonna knock that off. Look at that jank city tonight, but we like the chaos, right? Yes, it's very charming. Correct. Yeah, I think I've covered that. So this month it's Black History Month in the US. And most of you are from the US, so I'm trying to honour that with the charity that I've chosen. And it's also International LGBTQ History Month. So with that in mind, we are with the Trans Empowerment Project. If you don't know them, they work with BIPOC, disabled trans people, some of the most marginalised people, I'd imagine, certainly in the US. So great cause. If you know what you're donating to, hit donate as a command. If you'd like to know more, hit charity as a command. There should be a pop out if you're watching on desktop, and of course you've got that lovely QR code in the top corner. So I hope that's all very clear. So as we go into this interview, if you subscribe or donate to charity, you won't see any sort of on-screen notification. I'm afraid we won't be able to have a natural conversation if we're getting constantly distracted. So I hope you don't mind that, but you will see your name scroll past on a break screen or ending screen, so you will see it, and thank you very much in advance if you're thinking about that sort of thing. Our beautiful gorgeous mods will be taking your questions over the break. It'll be in about an hour's time or so please have a think about what you'd like to ask during the initial conversation, but you don't need to drop them in right now. Hopefully it'll be sparked naturally by what we end up talking about. And very finally, before we go in, there's no stream next week. Here's a sentence I probably will never get to say again. I'm going to Vegas. Astarion and Karlak from Baldur's Gate 3 have both been nominated for Outstanding Character, which kind of takes the pressure off because it's the character, right? And it's a collaborative award, I suppose. So, well, it is between us and the writers and the millions of people that worked on these characters. So that's a thing. That's happening. And then when we get back, it'll be Life is Strange for a couple of weeks while I decompress and recover from jet lag, because I'm very, very fragile. So, shall we? Welcome one and all. We will begin with the luminous Josephine Baird, and if you don't know who I am, I'm Samantha Bayard. I don't often say my own name on this stream, it turns out, and I've made a note to maybe say that. Let's go. Okay. So, a little bit of lag. Yes, there you are. Hello. How are you tonight?
Hello, I'm fine, thank you very much.
Sounding gorgeous to me. I'm
Oh, good.
hoping they're picking you up. That is why I always check in with the guest first. So I don't want to do an intro and then like for nothing. Can we hear Josephine?
Wait
Someone
for the
please.
lag.
Someone please.
I promise I'll say something.
Catsalot
One,
says yes, we can
two,
all
three.
hear.
Oh, good. All right, good.
Excellent. I'll do you a little intro. Uh, Josephine Baird is a lecturer in game design at Uppsala University. That's in Gotland, right, in Sweden. Yes. And your other job is making anything I can get away with, which I love. Um, Her work spans the intersection of games, identity, transgender, and sexualities. She is a game designer, consultant, writer, and actor. Where it all started is a novel that she wrote and is illustrated by Suzanne Shifflett. It's out now. She also co-hosts the podcast It Is Complicated, which I've had the pleasure to be on twice now. I feel I've overstayed my welcome a little bit, but thank you very much. I've had the best time. And in what little spare time she has left, she draws funny pictures. They're pretty good pictures if you want to check them out and post them on the internet. This, in a roundabout way, is how she got into the wild world of game making. Actually, that was going to be my first question. We'll start with the childhood. So we've got hours. It's all good. But why games? How did you get into games? Was that something you've always been doing? Either I know you've also got you're also into tabletop and LARPing and everything. So your interest is very broad, I think, compared to mine, I suppose.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And thank you for the introduction that I wrote. Also,
I also commented on it a bit.
I did. No, I appreciate that very much. And you've not overstayed your welcome. Come anytime. I love having you on.
Just careful what
It
you
is
wish for.
complicated. Just come. It'll be fabulous. Or more chaos.
Excellent.
Um, yeah, games. Why? Oh God, I don't know. Um, I'm, I guess, of the generation, one of the first, I suppose, or the first had games throughout majority of my life. And when I look back, I realized I've been playing them. Obviously, like many people, like, play games all through your life, but they were so important to me all through my life. So much so that I realized that they've been particularly transformative just generally throughout every aspect of my most important parts of my life. When I've been really well, when I've been happy, when I've been sad, when I've been by myself, when I've been with groups of people, and realizing that has been a big part of realizing why it's such an important art for me, why I'm so keen to make them, talk about them, play them as often as I can with other people, not as often as I would like to other people. My RPG group has dissipated like all things that happened during the pandemic. We got together, made amazing games together, played a fabulous campaign of Monster Hearts, and then sadly we all had to go back to this weird thing called the outside world, and I don't approve of it.
I do not approve it. Down with that sort of thing. Yeah, I was going to say that I think what's particularly extraordinary about you is that you everyone else, including myself, on who's guested, and pretty much everyone I know, has had quite a few different ways in before they've probably played games all their lives. But it sounds like you knew that this is what you wanted to do for a job
God,
quite
no.
early, or did you not?
No,
No,
I wish. No, I had
your
no
your
idea what I was doing.
your degree was in psychology and
Psychology.
philosophy. Is that
Yeah, yeah,
right? I think that's like
yeah.
where you've ended up. I think that's exactly where you needed to be in
Thank you.
terms of what
Yeah.
you lecture on and everything. And the MA yourself, read the CV. I did do a little bit of that. And the MA was on gender studies. That's right, something like that.
Yes,
Yeah.
for the money and Katrine prizes.
So you put all those things together, plus an interest in games, and then I think you get this incredible the body of work that you've served up. Well, certainly that's available for me to have a little snoop on and go, oh, I picked the wrong career. I should have done this. I think for me, you've had the dream career. I'd
Oh
love
my God,
to
thank
talk
you.
about games all day and how it relates to gender and sexuality. I think it's an incredible thing that you've done, and that's partly why
I
we want you on the show.
I think I lucked into it, honestly. I had no idea. I have no idea. Those kids who, they absolutely know what they're going to be when they grow up. I had fucking clue whatsoever. And I went through many different, I feel like had the luck and opportunity and mistake and disaster of having like 12 different careers in the
Okay, I was
period
wrong.
I've been in. Well, no, it's funny because I've actually, no, I had no idea that I wanted to be in games, or even that it was possible to do anything in games, like many of the people who've been on here, and so many people that I know who work in games or teach in games. Nobody really believes that you can do it, that it's some sort of mythical thing that other people do. And I
And the
must
game
admit,
just appears, doesn't it? It just
yeah,
appears.
just, well, out
And
of,
yet we play them, we're obsessed with them, and never for once go, maybe I should find out how these things are made.
God, no. Yeah, it's like,
it's it, it's funny you say that. I was going to ask if there was much like, I don't know if opposition is the right word, but when I did my English degree and I had my A level predictions in my hand. I was going around university to university, and one, which will remain unnamed, asked me my favourite book, and I said The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy by Douglas Adams because I was 17 years old, which I think is legit. But I could see the storm descending over the, and it wasn't Thomas Hardy or whatever, so I was expelled quite quickly, for that was not the canon, for it was a silly throwaway, and there was obviously no philosophy or satire in it or any worth, because it was seen as a comedy book. But then I was then in The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy a few years later on Radio 4, and I thought, ha ha. But years later, I was then on the tour, and we got approached by 2 PhDs studying The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. And I thought, how the hell did I miss that? And I do wonder, was that something? Did the academic support grow with you? Or is that something you've spearheaded? Because you also, this is a question complicated by the fact you're in Sweden, and I don't know the academic scene over there.
it's not dissimilar to many other places. Games research, game academia is very much in its infancy. There really aren't very many programs that do it. You can study it, for example, at a bachelor's level, and it almost always is sort of like a practical course. Like, how does one do this? It's not necessarily an analytical one. We have a master's program here, and it's more analytical, but getting a PhD in games, almost, I don't believe it certainly doesn't exist in where we are. And there are very few places one can actually get that. Most people who have a PhD in this sort of thing have a PhD in something else that happen to do with games. I've been trying to convince the university to give me a PhD for years, and not one of them has snapped me up yet. And
If you were to call it ludology, do you think they would sprinkle a little bit of Latin on it?
that's what I should have done. Shit, I knew there was something. I foolishly went in and told the
I know
truth
someone
instead.
that's studying like board games, like physical games at academic level. Maybe we should have a word to see how they've done it. I wonder if it's the electronic factor that's alienated.
I think that's what it is. I know people who study chess, and that's very proper. It's like the favorite book thing, right? I go in and I study Final Fantasy VII, and I study, Hades and games like that, and go in and go, oh my god, these games are great, and they go, sorry, what?
What is
You
game?
don't have to be an
Space
old man moving
Invaders.
little figures around. That's proper.
With a little measuring tape. I remember that going, that's not for me. I'm
This
out of
brain
here.
does not work that way.
This
God,
is
no.
fun. Yeah. I'm still just in awe and a bit jealous. So I'm going to read some things. Titles of past papers and talks include Role-playing as yourself, designing a live-action role-playing game for trans self-expression, exploration, and embodiment. Liminal intimacy, role-playing games as catalysts for interpersonal growth and relating. And Courting Euphoria, designing for trans and diverse gender exploration, expression, and embodiment through live-action role-playing. I know a lot of the people in tonight are going to eat that up. A lot of your papers and talks are delivered on YouTube, so have a look after this. I think that would be amazing. Someone said study of the anthropology of ludonarrative myths and devices. Boom. With a sprinkling of gender. There you go.
Thank you.
Thank you for sorting that out. I knew we could do it.
Steal that.
Anyway, that said, all my favourite things in those titles. Said hugely jealous. I'm going to line up a little bit of a talk that you did. It's about 2 minutes long. It really resonated because my first JRPG was Final Fantasy VII, and I remember that particular episode, and that really landed with me as well. We'll come back to why. I'll see you in a sec.
And at the end of the night, you reach the threshold of our container, and you're given that choice.
Oh,
And it's really
it would
chill.
help
Again, remember,
if I was
she's not
on
going to be.
the right time
Catch you.
code. And yet again, it undermines me, but I remembered it in my head. So bear with me. We were at 2 minutes. Look at this. We're absolutely going for it, right?
I know. And so I thought I'd start the conversation with a discussion of a role-playing moment that I had, which when I started working in game design, and when I started specifically working with LARP, I was immediately reminded of. Now, I don't know if this is recognizable to anyone in the room. Yeah, okay. It's somewhat iconic to a few people. I can see knowing smiles here already, which is lovely. Imagine me of a certain age, I shan't tell you what, when that game on the left there originally came out. I'm young, I'm in England, which is a country where, well, I don't know how to describe the relationship to gender and gender conformity, but it looks like this, right? And imagine me trying to sort of like desperately figure out who I am and what I am. And I'm at home, and this game appears in front of me. Now, it's not magical, I went out and bought it, but you know, eventually it was there. And in the middle of this game, my brave warrior who was fighting against capitalism, amongst other things, suddenly appears in this quest, in this RPG, in a precarious situation where he is a cisgender person, he must dress up like a woman. He has no choice. He must do it in order to, I don't know, save the world, basically. And of course, as a good hero, I, who was playing this particular protagonist, thought, if I must, I will throw myself upon this giant sword that he was carrying and do this thing. And it was absolutely thrilling, of course, because it was one of the first times I'd experienced anything like that. I'm not kidding. I was living in a culture where trans really wasn't a thing. It wasn't a word that I was aware of. And suddenly I've been given this experience to inhabit another person, another role. And that was the best part, because it wasn't me saving the world. It wasn't me having to dress convincingly as a woman and suddenly be reflected upon as a woman in this game. It was Cloud. It gave me the perfect excuse and the perfect opportunity to experience this role in this tiny little way. And that was, I think, one of my first experiences of having a role play moment really give me a sense of what it could do for me as a person, as a trans person, trying to come out in an environment that wasn't really very accommodating. On the right, there is the most recent version of that game. If you're interested, it is a digital game. I apologize. I will mention a couple of digital games now and again, just for interest's sake. But this is the new version of it, and I guarantee you, anybody who's played the original, go play the new one. It is super gay and does not in any way disappoint. And I played it a few times.
Amazing. I love it. I wish I just broadcast the whole thing. I hope that piques people's interest. As I said, we've got a lot of people in this room tonight that will adore your body of work. It gave me so much life to see somebody analyse it and present it to the world in a way that I couldn't articulate. So thank you very much for that. When we first met, when you had me on the show, I remember turning a question round on you and saying, why has Baldur's Gate 3 resonated with you as players? Because I know that even amongst the podcast hosts and guests, people, you know, it's from people who've never played a game to people who've only played tabletop D&D. It's been very broad, but I'll make this question even broader. Why role play? Why does that resonate with us so deeply?
It's funny because it's something that I think a lot of us understand instinctively. People who've played board games. That's why I wanted to write about it. And thank you for sharing that clip. It's somebody was asking where to get it. It's on my Twitter. I think it's the pinned tweet. It's also all on my website. I try to keep everything open access as much as possible. It's a personal. I've spent a long time trying to read this stuff without having any kind of access to academia and being very, very poor and having no, I don't come from an environment where that is easily accessible. So I try to make it as accessible as possible. And because these things are instinctive, we I think, understand these things. It's why I think Baldur's Gate has touched so many people, and why role-playing games especially touch people to explore themselves, because they give us a playground to do that. and they give us the excuse to do that. They give us the safer space to do that. I mean, the short of it is that games give us the chance to do something we're not allowed to anywhere else, which is play and perhaps be someone that our culture, our society says you can't be. For me, that was hugely important as a trans person. I didn't realize this at the time when I started playing Dungeons and Dragons or Final Fantasy VII, why it was so compelling to play another character who was able to do things I was not allowed to do. And so, on an academic sense, that means that I had the alibi to do that, right? The opportunity to do something because it's only a game, right? People don't
It's not really
worry
you.
about me. No, it's not really me. That's the other thing.
That's right. Yeah.
Perfectly true. You know, when Cloud has to dress like a beautiful woman and be recognized as such, it's okay because Cloud had to do it. In fact, I had to do it because the game made me do it.
You
Right?
can't progress in the game unless you do it.
No,
That's
I
right.
can't turn the game off,
But
and
I
I
think
can't.
what resonated with me, and I think with you as well, is that Cloud is treated with dignity, and it's not played for laughs. I mean, Cloud's always very androgynous looking, of course, so you completely believe that he can absolutely get away with it, you know. But it's the validation, isn't it? And being
Yes.
treated as, and you talk about, I'll use layman's term, rehearsal, and I guess reflection, or having that validation from the outside. And as you said, we're getting that from role play and from RPGs, and
Yeah,
it's an
because
interesting thing that's in therapy. It's one of the most powerful tools of therapy is to role play, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's these studies of the bloody obvious, which says that one of the most important things that can happen to a person is that they're recognized and validated and treated with respect. And maybe if those things happen to them, that perhaps they'll be happier people and be
Right.
more capable of all the things that they want to be. And games allow us to do that. You go into a game playing a role and you are recognized as that role, hopefully respected for that role. And Final Fantasy does that very well. Baldur's Gate does that extremely well. I mean, allows you to be validated in all sorts of different ways that we culturally tend not to, you know. And having that experience in the game may give you the confidence to try to have that experience outside of a game. That certainly was true for me. It's like I go into a game. I remember playing Dungeons and Dragons and you know, role playing the woman I knew I was, and then having that opportunity there, and then maybe I was a little braver to do that somewhere else, and realizing at one point that games did that for me. And when I had the opportunity to do this academically through a weird set of circumstances that led to me being here, I really wanted to talk about that. I wanted to say, look, games can do this, and by accident, right? We don't necessarily design for that. What would happen if we did? What if we intentionally designed with this in mind? And that's my research. That's what I'm trying to do, is to make games that let people do that. And because I know they can. So
Are there many others in your particular field?
there are definitely people who do career game studies, absolutely. Some absolutely fabulous people who I'm incredibly have a tremendous admiration for, and wish I'd come up with their ideas before they did. There's some fabulous
Amazing.
who talk about career
We're very
gaming.
grateful for you, obviously, but we're also grateful there's more. I think people want more of this sort of stuff, right? You're getting so much love, by the way, in the chat for making your work available. Thank you. That's
It's okay.
Massive. Yeah.
Oh,
that's really massive for
I'm
people.
happy. As much as I can, I will make everything open access. And if somebody finds something in mind that they can't access, they're very welcome to write, and I'll get it to you some way or another. Because, yeah, I don't come from that background where people are. You know, you were saying, oh, did you know you were going to go into games? No, I didn't think I could do that, and I didn't think there was a job there. I needed, especially when I was first starting out in academia, I didn't have any funding. I was trying to do this at the same time as 3 other jobs, and then finally found out that that's not a sustainable way to live. Right, and then gave it up for a while, and then was lucky enough to start it up again through doing games. But yeah, so it's really important to me that people have access to that as much as possible.
Yeah, I mean, that's very much in my small non-academic way, the aim of this show is to shine light on all these jobs that people don't know are available to them. I mean, pretty much anything you can think of is something that can be performed in the workplace, in the games industry, and that's like my personal mission now, because people think of, I guess, devs, writers, maybe actors. That's sort of where it ends. So bringing me on to my next question. You're training the next generation of game devs, I suppose, right? Considering the mass layoffs that are happening right now, the bloodbath, as I like to call it, as they go, how is it looking at graduate level right now? What are you telling them? What do you expect to happen? Do you feel
Yeah.
guilty like I
Oh God,
do?
yeah. Fuck yeah! I feel
Yeah.
terrible. I'm in this really odd state where I've been given this, what I think is a dream job, is to be able to teach on subjects and having some protection to be able to say the things that I say without having to. Yeah, I get blowback. I'm terrified of it, and it's not a very nice environment right now to say things like, oh, I think trans people should be treated equally in lots of different environments. But I get to say that to my students, but I also have to be honest and say, look, it's a mess right now, and I'm terrified to say, here are the things that I think are important, like you shouldn't crunch. We should value everybody's work. We should have protections in the workplace. Unions should be a thing. We should validate all kinds of work and positions. We should credit everybody properly. All these sort of things are true. And then to say, I know you're going to go into environments that potentially aren't like that. And a lot of students are very keen to get into those environments. That's why they're there. It's nice to teach in an environment where people are definitely interested in what they're doing. And my advice is, okay, I'm desperately in love with indie gaming. It's my passion. I like big games too, but I am a huge nerd for indie games. And so one of the things that has always been a caveat in my life is people are very rarely going to give you permission to do the things that you want to do. They're very rarely going to give you permission to do the things that are really worth something. And so if you can, sometimes you need to just do it yourself. And so I said to my students often, if you can't get in, if people are not letting you in, of course try, of course make connections, of course go out there. Do it yourself as well. Make your things, put them out there, be creative, be different, be unusual, find your voice. We as the gaming industry, even though the problems are there is still a value to the original, to the unique voices that we all have. And so I was like, put yourself out there, make your art, share it. I have done all of the things I've done, whether it's make games or films or whatever, in spite of it, not because of that. So and it's still hard. It's really hard. But
I mean, I was going to say this year has been, I don't know why this year, but this year seems to be very good for queer representation across the board. From something like Baldur's Gate that sort of went so mainstream unexpectedly to Goodbye Volcano High and Thirsty Suitors, and she has got a little bit in there as well. And like, it's there and people aren't really commenting on it so much as they used to.
Yeah.
And that's happened so quickly compared to traditional filmed, what I like to call passive media. It's sort of shocking, and it's really encouraging. And I hope what's going on is just a blip, because I think people like playing the games, they like feeling represented, and like you so nicely set out and explained, they like to role play and they like to try things they never would in real life. So I think the imagination and human art will overcome, right? That's what we're hoping for. And please unionize if you're thinking about it. If you're not thinking about it, just I'm working class Irish, Jamaican, British person, and you're Swedish. You're not going to hear much different from us, I don't think. But it's the only way you get collective power. And like you said, to reiterate on that, like, no one ever got their rights by being polite or asking nicely. It doesn't work like that. It's not going to happen, and we've got to get a bit brave and ready to push back.
Absolutely. And this is how, I mean, people ask, how did you get into this? Because that's the question I'm asked. And another lovely student today asking me about that. And they were really interested in directing. And I was very, very interested in that. So I'll try and talk to them. And it's so hard because my story isn't traditional either. I got into this through, like I said, I drew a funny picture online of my favorite game at the time, and I posted it, and roundabout weird way that ended up with me being here, because at the time when I did do that, I needed the outlet, and it was the outlet, and
And you were brave enough to put that out in the world. I mean, I don't know if that's the right word, but it feels right, because it's exposing yourself to whatever the internet's got to give you, and then you got to remember there's that, and there's the personas people have, the people who role play on social media, you know, and you've got to take all that with a pinch of salt. It's all gestalt now, isn't it? It's different things to different people. It's all role play 24/7. Thank you for speaking to that. It's really nice to get that, well, I guess, early career insight as to what's going on. I hope they don't feel disheartened. I see some really lovely posts from particularly indie companies saying, you know, we are still hiring. We've got no plans to lay anyone off, because there isn't one bloke at the top of the tree who takes all this money as profit. So that's good. But I can't. I certainly, as an actor, can't offer much hope or any sort of knowledge as to how this is going to go. But I truly believe it will come around. I think it's just going to take some time. I think the current obsession with the AI and crunch and everything, it'll fail, but in the meantime there'll be a lot of misery, you know, before they realise that. So you've talked a lot about advocating for others. Standard question on Takes a Village: who advocates for you?
Oh, so many people. You know, I know how lucky I am, having the background that I've had. So many people have advocated for me. My wife, my beautiful partner, people who've helped me one way or the other, through getting into the places that I've been professionally, but just personally. You don't get anywhere without this village, without a community, and without people taking a chance on you and reaching out. I've been watching, as you pointed out to me, I've watched most of the episodes, I think, of It Takes a Village.
Friend of the show. I call you every week. I go, friend of the show, Josephine Baird's here.
I like being a friend of the show. That always makes me very pleased. But you know, the stories are very similar. You know, I think Leon's story last week was really beautiful about, you know, you reaching out and saying, okay, let's bring you in. Let's see what we can do with you. I had the same experience. Okay, I think I can tell this now. I know I can, but I haven't told this before. Okay, so the way I got into this, I've mentioned it already. I wasn't very well for a period. If you're trans and queer in this environment, at some point you are not going to do your best. And I was a period where I was not very well. And I was struggling, and I didn't really know what to do with myself, and unemployed and feeling really rough. And my darling wife asked me one day, you know, what do you do? What do you do to feel better? What do you do to do better? And I said, well, I used to play games, and I like to draw, and I hadn't been doing either for some time. And so she encouraged me to. She bought me a game, and she bought me a pad and paper, and I started to draw. And at the time I was playing a game called Celeste, which is a beautiful, beautiful game about mental health and all the things I was experiencing at the time. And so I started drawing pictures of Celeste. Sorry, this is going to be a little emotional. I apologize.
Please don't.
Okay. All right, so I started drawing pictures of Celeste. I posted them on my Instagram, and I was lucky enough to have people pay some attention to them. And then one day I got a beautiful email from a very dear friend now, a woman called Amora, who it turned out was one of the people who made that game and was the artist. And we got to chatting. I was tremendously moved that she reached out. It meant the world to me, because this piece of art had really spoken to me. It had transformed me. It had said things to me. What I hadn't really realized was how queer a narrative it was. Everybody else seemed to know, but I didn't seem to know at the time. And then one day, Amora wrote me a lovely message and said, hey, we're thinking of making it more obvious that this particular character is who they are. And would you like to talk about that with me? And so I did. And we talked a lot about how that might work. And eventually it became a scene right at the end of the game. And it meant the world to me. It really did. And it was being able to impact something that had impacted me so profoundly. And she asked me not to talk about it for a while, NDAs and all that. It wasn't really an NDA. She just, a friend asked me not to talk about it. So I didn't for several years. And then I got this job because of that little bit of work. And when I asked her, hey, I'm going to try and get a job in games, could you send me a reference? And she sent me the letter that moved me to tears. It was so beautiful, and said, advocated so much for me, and said this, the conversations we'd had. And that's the letter that got me this job. And so I wrote to her and I said, hey, listen, I got this job. I'd really like to celebrate. I'd like to get a Celeste tattoo, because I got tattoos and I'm mad for them. And she designed the tattoo that I then got. And then she wrote a little thing on her blog saying about what it meant. And then I said, can I talk about this now? And she was like, yes, you can. And so I said, thank you, because reaching out the way she did from a simple picture that I drew because I was feeling not very well, inspired by a game that meant the world to me, and to have some impact, told me you can. Having someone reach out, say, yes, you can do this. Come and let me show you that you can do it. Let me give you just a little bit. And she gave me a lot, but in this particular instance, just a little bit of an inkling that you can do this, proved to me that I could. And that knocked onto one thing, and then another, and then another, and then another, and now I'm here. That's what that kind of advocacy can do.
That's incredible. And not just advocacy, but endorsement, active endorsement, because I found that has the biggest effect in terms of work. In terms of my mental health, advocacy, absolutely. But all my jobs have been because other people have vouched for me. I haven't been able to sort of walk up and get that, even if, just getting in the room to audition. Thank you for sharing that. That's so special. I'm so glad you got that experience and that relationship. And there's that interaction. We talk about interactive fiction, but you got to have it in real life as well. I think that's an absolutely wonderful story. Thank you for sharing. I've dominated this chat, and I've gone in on my own, my own bias. So what I want to know from you, what sort of thing would you like? Because you host a podcast, so you're always asking questions. What would you like to talk about? Is there anything you've always wanted to be asked, but no one ever asks you that question?
Oh my God. And I knew this was coming too, because you asked this every week, and I was just like, I just completely blanked. No, you're right.
That's
it's
okay.
Horrible. I'm a terrible, I can dish it out. I can't.
But I mean, because I've gone in on like academia and this and role playing in general, this is what we're going to talk about, and you have so many other things in your wheelhouse. I just wondered if you wanted to even just a bit of self-promotion if you want. Anyway, just think about it.
I will.
You don't have to have an answer right now.
The thing that came to mind was like, Josephine, do you want to join our RPG group? And I was like, yes, please. No one ever asks. That's like,
have a think later, because we'll have hopefully people little brains are whirring out there, and they're thinking of some questions based on all the amazing things you've been saying. This is what I can't work out, because you have talked about being educated in the UK to a degree and then leaving. So were you born here, or what's the deal?
No, I'm a gigantic weirdo. I was born in Spain. Although I'm not Spanish, I left when I was 18 months old, and then I moved to Holland. My family moved there, and then when I was about 9, I moved from Holland to England, and then I lived there until about 2007, and I moved to Sweden. So I'm a little bit all over the place, and
you're a true European. I'm very jealous.
Thank you. It's weird.
I've got an Irish passport. I'm planning on using it. It's going to be all right.
Oh no, I have a Swedish passport, although I would never count myself as natively Swedish, but I got one. I applied 2 weeks before the Brexit vote because I could just see where it was going, and I was like,
I applied the morning after it was in, because I was still in denial that was actually going to happen. Yeah.
I love England. I love being there. I haven't been back for a long time, and I miss it. But I'm afraid I'm very pleased to have been here for a while. So
I've got to go down the gender rabbit hole, because I've only lived in the UK. I know we're Turf Island and also Plague Island, thanks to the way the government handled the pandemic. But you did a certain gesture in that video when you described the way gender is handled in the UK, and I was I have no reference for that. But you're in lovely
Nonsense.
socialist Sweden. It's not a diss. I don't think I'm in the best place for any sort of love or tolerance towards trans people. So what's the story? What was the difference, I suppose, between being in the UK and being literally anywhere else in Europe?
It's like anything, right? It's sort of like playing poker and trying to figure out who's got what hand where, right? It's I wrote an article about this, one of the academic articles that you can find. It's about how I had to move through different jurisdictions in the EU to be able to just be me in the way that I wanted to be. Sweden wasn't great for a little while. They had the first law in 1978 that actually gave any rights to a trans person, but because it was written in 1978, it wasn't the greatest.
It's written in 78, in 78 language.
So when I was trying to move here, the laws were pretty terrible. So I used what had been rather new law in England to change my documentation, and then legally crossed a couple of state lines and managed to convince the Swedish government to let me be recognized for who I was, despite their terrible laws. Thankfully, I've done some advocacy work with different organizations. I've worked with, I know Stonewall's a terribly naughty word in England these days, but I used to work for them. And
I thought they'd actually done something wrong when I started seeing them.
It's so awful. And then I worked with similar groups here in Sweden, and thankfully in Sweden those laws have been somewhat changed. And so, but it's what's so terrifying about all this, and I know we're going down a little bit of a different route, but what's so terrifying about this is that all these laws that currently may protect me seem to just disappear at the top of a, depending on the election, right? So, in the US, my friends
in the US,
there,
I mean, really quite, I mean,
it's terrifying.
bodily rights can just go like that, let alone
and I see
women, let alone the rest of us, and you're like, no one is safe. It's rather and again, a reminder why we need good people around us and communities, and to never take these rights for granted, because there are people out there that will take them away at the drop of a hat, like you said. I'm glad you brought up a little bit about a Stonewall, actually, because so the majority of viewers are in the US, so we've got a trans empowerment project. I don't think we've got a charity like that in the UK. We have Stonewall, but it's not as specific as trans empowerment project, because that's also for disabled BIPOC people who are trans. We've got Stonewall, we've got Mermaids, which again, hugely controversial for existing. What's in Sweden? What's your equivalent of Stonewall and Mermaids?
It's called, it's an acronym, it's RFSL, and there's a couple of people in chat who are very knowledgeable, who are adding some context. Thank you. Winter of Nine, yes, there was some, I'll let them speak very knowledgeably in chat, but there is a group called RFSL, which effectively translates to an organization for the promotion of LGBT rights. And there's that, and there's actually another group which is really cool called RFSU, which is for the promotion of safer sex practices. And I was amazed when I moved here and saw how big they were, because they're not only one organization, they have chapters, I guess, whatever you would call, in all kinds of different cities and towns. So Stonewall, certainly when I worked there, was very much London based, and then they had an office in Scotland and one in Wales, but they certainly didn't have one in every city. In Sweden, there's an RFSL pretty much everywhere you might go that has a large enough population.
Wow,
and
that blows my mind.
Huge. I live on a tiny island in the middle of the Baltic called Gotland, and there is this much of a population, and we have an RFSL. And
that's really cool.
I met them the other day, and they're great.
Yeah, I imagine that's quite reassuring, right? To know that's there. God, what was I see? I saw something the other day about some lesbian bar in America, letting straight men in, right? But what actually got me wasn't even that. Was the fact that they said, it's basically fewer than one lesbian bar per state in the US, and I'm already like, maybe there's 2 in London. Like, this is awful. This is a terrible.
When I used to live there, there were more, and I don't know.
I mean, I remember, there used to be, they've been, the London gay scene has been whittled away, along with the closure of the nightclubs as well.
It sucks.
We're getting into a bit of a hole, getting depressed.
Yeah,
about
it's okay. So games.
There is trans joy and non-binary joy and queer joy in games, and this is what keeps us going. What inspires you? That's a question I can ask.
Oh my God. amazing art and people who make them. Like, just that's why I love games, and it always amazes me people don't think of it as art. It's like any art form, you know. There's good and there's bad examples of it in any art form. People who make these things with passion, the way you talk about these things, the way your guests do, it's so wonderful. I always feel so excited seeing people talking about the art, their things that they're making. It's why you asked me what my job was, and I was like, well, I suppose I'm a lecturer, but what I really am is someone who tries to make things, and if I can get away with making them, I'll make them. And I'm always inspired by anybody who's doing that, you know. The game that I made for the research that I'm doing is called Euphoria, and it's based on queer nightclubs, right? Because I always thought of them as safer spaces where people could play and perform and be themselves and role play and perform on stages and stuff. And that's where I first saw this when I was coming out many years ago in London, when I used to go to Club Whatever and places like that, was seeing people make amazing things in environments where they weren't allowed to, not really. And that kind of art and that kind of passion in any format always inspires me. And I see it in games very much right now. And yeah, especially the games you just mentioned, Volcano High and Thirsty Suitors and games like that, where I'm like, oh my goodness, who thought to make Thirsty Suitors?
Yeah.
That's
And why wasn't this done
acceptable.
before?
And why wasn't I invited?
Thank you for bringing camp back and introducing a generation to camp. You know,
Yes,
it's so much
joyful, and that's how I react to these things. I mean, the news is so devastating. The only thing I can do is just like, okay, I've got to be sardonic and ridiculous and sarcastic and weird. You know, this is the only response I know, and I see that in games. And
yeah,
joy.
hopefully we get more of that. I think
Yes,
it'd
please.
be interesting to see what happens. But you know, this games are still being made. There are things happening, and you know what? They're profitable. Queer games are profitable. There is no argument against it anymore. You know, if certain regions of the world don't want to publish them or whatever, first of all, people find a way. They'll use a VPN. Argentina's popular. Because of the exchange rate, I hear. People will find a way, and I think it's great that more people are developers and publishers are bold enough to go, if you don't like it, screw you, you don't get the game. I'm not going to censor it for you, like, you know, has happened in most other art forms. You know, it's huge censorship when it goes to certain regions, and you think, yeah, you're not artists, so I was just catching up with, oh god, everyone's talking about a queer bar closures near them, so that's we have online personas, we have role play. I think do you know what I think? I think live performance is going to make a hell of a comeback in the next couple of years. You know what?
I think so. I agree. Yeah, I really do. Yep.
We will find an outlet. We do. We will find one. We just have to remember, again, this is why I do this, remind people there are like-minded people out there, and the good thing about the internet and the good thing about the echo chamber is we can make it a positive one, and we make our own little villages, and we meet up for village chats every week, catch up with each other, and it's all good. It's community, you know, it's what as humans we strive for. And when you don't see yourself represented, you do everything you can to connect with that. And it's something you talk about on your show quite a lot. I'm here to plug your show quite a lot today. It is complicated. I love it, adore it. If you've heard it, by the way, please rate it as well, because I've been promoting it and I haven't said that bit because I don't live in podcast world. I don't really understand.
I don't think I do either, but yeah.
Yes, please. Okay, I've just had a little message come in. Oh, have I? What was that? Sorry, I'm just making sure that mods are happy. We're okay. We're not going to pull the plug on us tonight. It's all good. Someone's asked about a village bar. You got to bring your own drinks, and I know where most of you are. You're at work. I'm not taking responsibility. Join a union. Make it a rule.
I'm drinking water on camera, but don't worry.
You drink what you want. This is our land. This is our gentle socialism. So as not to frighten the Americans away. Gentle social. Just a little taste of what could be.
You know you want to.
You know you want to share. You're so generous to the charities. I know you want to share. Let's find that together. Let's be mates. It's all good. We make good art together. That was something I wanted to say. Neil Gaiman's make art. It's so simple, isn't it? And I think in your life that has been incredible For me, that's what I got out of it. That mantra is just get that out there, express yourself and get it out there.
I love his. It's a speech, I think, that's translated into a
Yes.
tiny book called
Yeah, it is.
"What Art Matters," and I have. I think I have 2 copies of that at home. I can always give one away because I'm just like this. This is
Read
what
this.
this is a manifesto
Quite,
for
I
how
was going to say it's quite a manifesto, isn't it? If you haven't read that
Beautiful.
chat, please do. It's incredible. Tell me about your book.
Oh, my book.
Yeah.
Okay. Actually, yes. There you go. That's something that people don't ask me about. Partly because I always like.
Oh,
I
good.
It's also because
There's
I
so
just
much
tend
to
to
ask you about. I'm just like, I don't want to pick the wrong thing.
No, please.
So we can talk about performance, right? We can talk about you turning up to a bar or two and performing. Royal Vauxhall Tavern down the road from me. You got to tell me next time you're in town.
I
Tell me
know I
next-
will. Yeah, and I'll try
anyway.
and convince them to put me on stage again. The book. Okay,
the
yes.
book.
The book actually is in part about a period in London in 2003, when I was experiencing and learning about these kinds of clubs. It's a fictional account. None of it's true, sadly, because I didn't want to. I guess the same parasocial idea, right? Like, you want to include something that is of your experience, but of course, like sharing your own story in that way is not always the thing that you want to do. So it's a book about 2 women who fall in love in early 2000s London queer scene, in a way that I think is really quite normal, but people would, especially even nowadays, think is completely scandalous, right?
Isn't that amazing, though? I love that. It's so easy to be controversial.
I'm just like,
not
oh,
put
for
any
God's
effort.
sakes. Yeah,
Just
and the way
turn
that
up.
I know, just you are. What was somebody said today? Oh yeah, a colleague was saying, oh, my life is the case study of the work that I teach, because apparently I'm so abnormal and weird.
I'm stealing that.
Case study. Yeah, God, yeah. I'll tell Sabina. I'm sure they'll love it. And so the book is basically that. It's a love story between 2 women who meet in a queer kinky club and fall in love, and then the story is. The mantra was basically that all the problems they have in the world have nothing related to their identity and everything to do with the world that's around them. And one of the big things is dealing with class and dealing with the ways in which people see how we live our lives differently, and what problems that can cause for 2 people who just want to be together. And I talked to a friend of mine who's Campbell X, who's a director who did a lot of work representing, especially Black and queer people of color in the movies that they made. We talked about this, and I was like, these communities don't get talked about very much in a way that isn't scandalous or weird or sort of like, ooh, isn't it interesting and weird and strange to look at their lives? I wanted to make it like it's boring and normal and fabulous and sweet and painful and dull and also kind of just funny. Like all the problems they have are kind of ridiculously silly, but I hope it's compelling. And it talks about a time that meant a world to me and all the problems we had. So hopefully, yeah, it's a novel. It's we're releasing it 1 chapter at a time on the internet because we didn't think we could get anybody to publish it, but with any luck. A mutual friend that we met recently for a chat, you and I we're talking about, maybe we can talk about this with the publisher, but at the moment it's available online. You go to it's called Where It All Started, and it's at whereitallstartednovel.com, and we release it 1 chapter a week in text and also in audio format, and it's got beautiful illustrations by an amazing artist called Suzanne Shifflett, and hopefully you like it. And also I've started doing an advice column. One of the characters in this book is called Jen, and she is me without a filter. If there's a character that's me, it's me without a filter, and she gives an advice column every week. So if you have a problem that you want advice on, you're very welcome to write in,
the book now.
and she'll give a reply. And she's very.
If you want the audiobook version, and for some reason don't want to read it yourself,
yes, it's a.
I'm just gonna do that.
Mm-hmm.
With that, it's time for a break. Jeff has spoken.
Oh, Jeff has spoken.
We will not be watching Regs. We shall be having our own break to hydrate, take care of ourselves.
Ready for a break.
Have a swig a glass of wine if you want. Do whatever. But we'll be back in a few minutes. Josephine, I'll be in touch to find out when you're ready to come back. Take as long as you like. We do what we like here. It's wonderful. It's freedom.
Chaos.
Gentle socialism.
Gentle socialism.
All right, I'll see you all in a minute. Please think about questions. I hope you've got some really good ones. I've got more. Otherwise, I'm just going to keep going on. But yeah, what a wonderful guest we've had tonight. Yeah, chuck them in chat, and our glorious mods will pick them up. And I'll see you in a few minutes. At least 5.
At least 5.
I'll see you in a bit. Bye-bye. We are back. The sound is back. Always forget the sound. Thank you for joining us. Thank you to Josephine Baird, who is actually part of the village now, no longer a friend of the village. I thought I should mention that, because that's happened.
Oh, thank you. Oh my goodness.
I'm sure you're blown away by
I
the
am.
honour.
I'm really pleased. Thank you so much. Oh,
My made-up fiefdom, of which I am a benevolent dictator. I like to think, obviously, in anyone that disagrees with me, then things will happen.
yeah.
Someone was asking in the chat, if there's no stream next week, will the charity be extended into March since such a small month? Actually, it's 29 days this year, and I have covered myself because we started last week. We started on the 31st, so we will have 4 streams this month. I'm going to Vegas and you can't stop me, okay? That's a good title for a book, isn't it? I'm going to Vegas and you can't stop me. We've got some great questions coming in. Do you want to pick and choose at will, or would you like me to take the lead?
No, go for it, please.
I might go for the randomness of it, because there's some corkers in here. Okay, well, Loose Seal 90, which I assume is a reference to Arrested Development. I'm sure I've said this before. I'm just desperate for someone else to have heard of that show. Says, question for you. I'm a PhD student currently designing a master's class. Easy to mix up. I'll start again. I'm a PhD student currently designing a master's class on gender representation in video games. What's your number 1 recommended text that I should include?
Someone just wrote, "Bring the gentle socialism with you to Vegas." I think that should be the name for a
Wish
book.
me luck.
That should be what we should recommend.
Wish me luck.
Okay, serious answer, I suppose, is my number 1 text, and if you are a PhD student, you probably know this one already, but it is a great book for everyone, because not only is it really good for any master's student or PhD student, but it's also super accessible and really funny, is a book by a non-binary writer called Bo Ruberg, and their book is called Video Games Have Always Been Queer. And it's really good, and it tells you about how all those games that you've played and you thought weren't queer at all were actually queer all along, and shows you a new way to look at games and to realize that we've always included it. So you as you were saying, Sam, what is so exciting is seeing how much queer representation is happening in new games. But we've always included ourselves. We've always inserted ourselves into games, which is why I think of Cloud as one of the queerest, most trans characters in all of games. Yeah. And Bo's book is a really good read for that, and a lot of fun.
Thank you. I think what you also said in that talk, if you don't mind me quoting that wonderful talk again, of course,
please,
is how we like to see ourselves represented intentionally, not just by accident, not just by going, oh, they didn't realise they've opened the door for us there. It's when it's intentional. And I think, like, it was weird because 6 months, was it 6 months ago? No, 9 months ago. Summer, it was LGBTQ Pride month. And I was talking to the lovely David Mencken about queer representation in games. And we sat there with the audience going, can anyone name a lead character that is a happy gay person? Maybe doesn't die before. Yes, no, we covered ourselves in mainstream games, not the indies, because of course the indies have always covered this. And we sort of sat there, and if it had been 2 weeks later, I could have said the entire Baldur's Gate. Like everyone's pan. It's
everybody's pan. That's so good.
If we can have dragons and magic, everyone can be pan. Okay, that's all I'm going to say. But people are like, how does that work? Because we've got dragons and magic, and so therefore the default is pan. Like, where have you been?
It's low bar, right? Just as long as we have dragons and magic, everybody can be pan.
So, yeah, you have to have all those things in place. No one will believe you. Okay, next question. TurtleMac16 says, what is your favourite thing that you have created?
Yeah, this is awful. It's like, who's your favourite child, right? It's like, no, of course.
This time you're allowed to say.
I was going to say, we love them all equally. We do. Right now it's the novel for sure. I'm really proud of it. This was one of these things where we didn't see that something was made. Often the stories that were told about us were just painful, or just didn't really include us in the way that we thought. This doesn't represent us. This isn't us. And so I just like, okay, I'm just going to write the bloody thing myself. And then when we did, and Suzanne, who beautifully illustrated it, always makes me so happy to see her amazing art. I'm really proud of it. I'm really proud of the result, and whether anybody reads it or not. And that's often been the case with the things that I made. But beyond that, it might be Euphoria, the game that I made for the research I'm doing, which is also free, by the way. I'll put a link in. You can. It's right now it's a LARP, but we would love to make it into something not LARP, and I can't speak more about that until we manage it. But the rule set's for free, and that includes all the art that I made for it. That's there too.
Would you mind dropping some of these links maybe on Twitter later? Because I think just later. Don't do it now. And then what I'll do is when this goes onto YouTube, I'll put it in the description.
Thank you.
That's why we archive this stuff. So don't worry about it for now. But I am going like, where do we get this? How do we find all this stuff you're putting out into the world? It's wonderful. Okay, so next question. Cormac Chameleon says, pineapple on pizza, yay or nay?
I currently live in a country where you can buy a pizza in most pizzerias that has banana and curry on it, and this is, I kid you not, one of the staples of this country, and the thing that I found the most difficult to cope with culturally.
You thought you were wild America with your pineapple. Can you handle Sweden?
Yeah, and banana pizza, banana curry pizza specifically.
I can't.
And I just, okay. You know, I mean, who am I to judge? I am a very free.
Who are we to judge? People like what they like.
A pan pizza person, if you will, and in this
pizza
case,
pan. You didn't think that's what you were gonna get, but that's what you.
You come for the puns.
We do. No, I'm not having. But I can imagine like plantain and curry. That makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Not technically banana. Depends on how ripe it is as to how banana-y it tastes. Yeah, there's a lot of. Someone said we don't have that abomination in Finland, thankfully.
Yes, the Finns know what they're doing. They have other things going on.
I was going to say nobody comes out of this clean. Okay. Yeah, I'm all up for pineapple, but I've just found out I have limits. There you go. Who'd have thought? I have some boundaries on what I like on my pizza. I don't like chicken on pizza. That feels very wrong.
They put steak with béarnaise sauce on pizza here as well. Yeah, it's really
steak
something.
At that point, steak in a roll.
Right? Like, why would you put that on posh?
Just have a really nice steak instead. Someone said curry on pizza sounds good. Yeah, I mean, I'm from the land of tikka masala, so you can get that anytime you.
Yeah. Oh, I miss that. Oh, I miss good. Oh, I miss Brick Lane.
Do you?
I do.
Oh well, you must come back. You must come back.
I will.
I'm off to Bradford for the Yorkshire Games Festival, so they'll have some tasty curry treats as well. So I'm looking forward to that.
Enjoy. Envy. I have curry envy. I will come.
I will come. A very long time. Yes, please do. Let me know. We'll hang out and cause a lot of mayhem. That would be lovely.
There will be chaos.
Shiv Thai streams. I hope I've got that right. Has many questions here. Let's see if we can bang through these.
Yes,
no, they're a fan of the podcast. This is a question I can't answer. Right, here's one for you. Cool. On your podcast, you talk about these ways which queer folk can be influenced by games, containment, bleed, et al. But do you ever worry that games could then, albeit absent-mindedly, also create unsafe spaces for queer and gender non-conforming folk? And how do we actively combat that?
Yes, is the short answer. There is very much that opportunity, unfortunately, because the way I talk about this when I teach it is that games are both a product of society and a producer thereof, right? We make games, we can't make something in a bubble. We are people who make games, so games reflect us. And if we do that without thinking about it, they will reflect some of the most difficult, challenging, disturbing parts of us, right? And often as artists, especially game makers, I find we do that on instinct, which is great. I mean, as an artist, acting on instinct and relying on something that isn't necessarily cerebral, something you just know or feel is the basis of the art we make. But without reflection, we can bring in all the problems of our society into our art. So very easily can create environments, and I think we can all think of examples of that, where we can see the worst of ourselves in those spaces. That's why, for me, the biggest tip for anybody who wants to do that is to reflect on that right when you start. So when you start making it, not afterwards, it's like access, right? People often will make something or create a space and they go, oh, and we'll add in access later. It's like, no, do it right at the beginning, because then it's built in. And it's the same with this. If you think about it right at the beginning, how can we build this into all facets of what we're making? You've got a much better chance to make something that's going to be accessible to everyone. But yeah, absolutely. It has all potential, like any art form.
Yeah, great answer, thank you. We have a triumvirate of questions here, but they're good, so I'll read them all. What other areas of your life do you find the most support for marginalised identities? How do you bring the positives of other spaces into your work?
That's a really good question. Sam, you've talked about this, and we've talked about it on our podcast. There's this realization that the games industry or games making spaces are surprisingly queer. I was surprised, as much as I went through psychology, philosophy, and gender and other environments. I found games to be oddly the queerest spaces that I've been in my department. I'm not the only one in the village. I'm actually in the minority. Queer identity is like, what? Hold on.
No, it wasn't supposed to happen like this.
No.
I mean, it's good, but it's bad.
Yes, I'm a weird minority. I'm not as queer as most of the other people in my department. This is not. I don't feel good about this.
This is not what we planned.
I'm not special anymore. No.
But I mean, I don't know if you've got surveys, like when we have it's a very young survey. We've only done it twice in this country, the Yuki survey, which says 24% of the games industry are off the rainbow. Do you have any idea what it is in Sweden at all?
I don't, but on personal experience, it's absolutely that, and it is wonderful, and it seems to be a growing village. Like I've noticed more and more every year that I've been in this environment, whether I'm going to a games conference or with students or with people who are working as academics. More and more of us seem to be openly queer,
and we're inspiring each other. So one area where I think we're having that influence, and I think that's why it's so important that everybody, all intersections, are visible. I think what's happened with it, in the way that generations ago, if you were queer, you'd be a dancer, you'd be a performer, you would get it. We've all tried, but I think people are role playing, seeing themselves in games, then finding out who are making those games. Why wouldn't you get into it? And of course it's an art form, of course it's going to draw queer people in. So I think that's a natural progression, and certainly with some of the younger folk I worked with on Baldur's Gate, some of the mocap engineers. For some reason it was with the mocap engineers that were very queer. You look around and you go, is anyone here cishet? No. Okay, cool.
I very recently noticed exactly that.
Yeah. And I asked them, and it was like, oh, I was playing Dragon Age, and I discovered I was bi, or I was, role playing this, and I thought I have to make the transition.
Yeah.
That's incredible power. And we discussed it's a private space, a safe space to explore that in a completely risk-free way. I think that's just a wonderful gift. That all art gives us, but for it to be interactive, for people to be able to role play in that is an incredible gift.
Yeah. And the only other place I felt that, because the question was anywhere else, actually was in those small queer clubs. I recognized the same feeling in games that I had there, which was so shocking, because I moved to an environment where there were fewer of those clubs. London was really my scene, especially in the early 2000s and then in the 2010s. It was huge. I mean, we were building these spaces. Yes, I was a dancer. That's in fact where I started. I was a dancer.
I'm waiting for this autobiography to come.
Yeah. Oh no, it's I'm a cliche in so many ways. And yes, I started out like that. And that's where I felt that for the first time.
Yeah.
And then the second time was in games.
Yeah. That's wonderful. I love to hear it.
So happy.
I guess this relates to that. What is a game or any other piece of media that has brought you queer joy in recent? What's your favourite gay game that's come out in this last year? Because there's been a few.
I know. The nice thing is that there's a choice. No.
I'm hijacking it.
God, please. No, the best thing is that there's choice. I know it sounds awful, but it used to be a bit like, it's definitely this one, because that was it.
Because that's how you form a stereotype, right? That's how you do it, because you get one chance, and so you have to represent everyone, and then it goes wrong, because you can't.
I mean,
have you got a favourite child?
Exactly right. Yes. No, I don't. I have. So it's very easy. I do. No, we mentioned it already. Thirsty Suitors is amazing, but Goodbye Volcano High is something else. That is a very special game and very use a metaphor and a simile to express a kind of experience that is really difficult and challenging, but also really beautiful. And yeah, I think those two really blow me away. Yeah, I think maybe that we mentioned them already, but those come to mind.
Volcano High was a little bit too close to home.
It was a little. It kind of. That's why I mentioned
played rhythm guitar and with a whole bunch of kids that were ready to move on.
I know. I played drums, right? And I was the same thing.
We should have a band. This is getting better and better. Yeah, no. But the difference was I didn't have the words non-binary available to me. I just didn't know what the hell that was about. But I felt And then I went to the queer bars and went, oh, I'm at home. I don't really know why, but I feel very comfortable here.
Yep.
So there you go. Oh, this is nice. Luke Valves says, what is a story in a video game or a setting that you'd like to see that you think hasn't been done yet? I hope this makes sense.
If I have, I wish I had one and then I would make it. No,
I think you get first dibs.
There's so many. There are so many.
I want more bearded NBs. There's one in Thirsty Suitors. That's my personal.
And they're there for like this much, and then they say we're not very well represented. We're very rarely included, and then whoop, they're gone.
They're gone. But you can stay, bearded envy. We can make a whole story about you.
Yes. So please, more interaction, please. In fact, you should have your own game. In fact, that would be
bearded NBs.
Bearded NBs.
And I will show up with a beard as well, just to confuse it.
Oh, I'll do it.
I've been wanting to do drag king stuff for a very long time.
I've done it once.
God, it's an art.
It is. I tried. It was moderately successful.
I was like, I just look like a boy, like a teenage boy.
I looked like a very camp gay boy, and it was just like, oh yeah, my drag king persona. We made an experimental hardcore band called Hamster Jam. It was two trans women doing drag king in queer nightclubs in London a few years ago. I've got video. I'll send it to you.
Oh please, it gives me life. Next question. Sister Nata says, how competitive is your field academically? I think we've all had ideas tonight, Josephine. We've all had, is it difficult to get work published or accepted at conferences?
Yes and no. It depends a bit. It's very similar to the idea of like trying to get into mainstream anything. Like there are definitely gatekeepers in academia. I was talking about this with another person in my village, fabulous academic called Doris Roosh, who was another person who really advocated for me. One of the people who really brought me in, gave me a game consulting job, and then brought me into this university. And we were talking about like, there were systems, academia. My God, I mean, I can't think of a more stuffy environment where there are set ways to do things, and if you don't meet certain standards, you can't be included. On the other hand, the best thing about games academia is that it's a discipline that's 30, 40 years old at best, right? In terms of digital games, especially.
Yeah.
And so the rules really aren't written, and to some degree. And I've always been of the opinion, do it anyway. I had my first crack at an academic career 20 years ago, and I was very poor, and I couldn't keep it up, and so I left. And I couldn't help every now and again feeling the itch to write something. And so I would just say, oh, bugger it, I'll do it anyway, and found that if you have a little bit of that, I'll do it anyway, write the thing anyway, you'd be surprised how you can get published, how you can get attention in the right places, conferences. And there are really good spaces that encourage new work. For example, that's a good place to start. There are really good games conferences that I can name if you're interested at all. This person who asked this, I can send links.
Yeah, you just got links. Okay, cool. If you,
again, there's
off the top of your head.
There's one in Austria, in Vienna, called Future Realities of Games, Frog for short, which also has an online component, which makes it very easy. And they have encouraged lots and lots of new work. That was the first conference I did when I was talking about game stuff. Absolutely terrified, and they were incredibly nice and very kind, and helped me get published as well. I wrote about a game called The Missing. I wrote a whole story about article about The Missing and why I thought it was a particularly weird queer game, and so they were great.
Amazing.
So
Great
Yeah.
stuff. I keep saying amazing, I'm blown away tonight. I'm very honoured to have you on here.
Oh,
Really am.
oh,
Don't
love.
look at me.
Oh.
Rose, I think we've got 3 questions left. Rose, what a heck says, what's your current favourite song?
My current favorite song. Good question. Oh, there's so many. Brain fart. I need to look at my online thing. I'm a drummer, right? And I live
Yeah.
in first time in my life I've lived in a place where I can actually have a drum kit out. When I lived in London, there is no way. If you're a drummer in London, it's pain to be. It's like constant, like feeling of like delayed gratification of ever being able to play the drums. And now I live in a place where I just put on anything and start drumming away madly to it because I have the space now. So my playlists are all just drum tracks that you can drum along to. But I think my favorite songs are by a band called the Magnetic Fields, and always will be. There's an amazing song called Andrew in Drag. That's probably my favorite right now, which is a beautiful story of a cis het guy falling in love with a drag queen and realizing that is his true love. And it's beautiful.
We love to hear it as well as see it on this show.
I do a really bad cover version with the ukulele.
If you could link that in the chat, we'll all have a look later. Thank you. PB Frog says, can you come to the States and metaphorically smack those which need smacking?
I am coming to the States in
There
March.
you go, PB Frog.
I'm going to be at GDC talking about trans in games.
No way, surely not.
I am.
Not trans stuff in games.
Oh, I know.
They need to hear it. They need to hear it.
Ruse.
They actually do need to hear it. I mean, I seek you out. There's people like me and people in chat and fans of this game, Baldur's Gate 3, that are on here by accident sometimes, but they've stayed. I like that. We seek this out, but there's a load of people out there that will adore it. Good luck.
I'm
Have fun.
terrified. I'm excited. I'm thrilled. I'm thrilled that they accepted. I put in an application
Call
just
for
because
papers.
why not? And then and then they wrote back and said yeah, and I was fuck what?
Quite right too. Quite right too.
So I'll be there, and I'm sorry I can't come to Iowa just this once, but if they'll let me, I'll come. Sure, and I'll tell them with a metaphorical.
Metaphorically. Stop doing that. Consent.
But metaphorically.
Be nice. Don't be a dick. I think this is the last question. Rose, what a heck says for us both, what was the thing that made you say, this is what I want to do?
You want to go first, or shall I?
I'll happily go first because I've said it a few times and I can knock this one out quick. I was studying English literature because I loved stories and I didn't know that's why I was doing it. And I was doing a Shakespeare module and I got to see a lot of Shakespeare. And I went, oh. And like I said to you, like everything you said about role playing is the reason I perform, and it's really unusual in an actor because a lot of them are extroverts, so they can go, well, I like having lots of attention, and it isn't that for me. It's everything you've said, alibi, bleed through, the rehearsal, the validate, all of that. So it all comes into it, and I'm really glad now becoming I get that opportunity to perform a little bit more often than I used to. So it was a lot of Shakespeare and being moved by it rather than on the page. How about you?
It's not dissimilar. It's realizing that art can move you, that it can change you specifically, and realizing that other people understood that, recognized it, but didn't quite know why. For me, it was playing. Most recently, it was playing Celeste and realizing like this has changed me. This art has not just touched me and I recognize something in it, it has transformed me. And anybody who has a passion for art, and I've noticed this in my students when I ask this question, like, look, everybody in this room, let me ask you, if I ask you right now, tell me a game that changed you and means that you're here right now. Everybody can answer. Because it was the realization that this isn't just something I experienced once. It was an experience lots of people have. And when I got the opportunity to do it, because it wasn't just I realized I wanted to do this. It was realizing I wanted to do this and having the chance to do it. The happy union of those two things, opportunity and passion,
luck,
happily collided. Luck.
Yes.
And I'm very well aware of how lucky I am.
Same.
And I will do my best not to squander that, and try to be really, when I'm scared, to express things publicly or go on things like this or to write, is to realize I am lucky to be in this position. I have a tremendous passion for this. I know other people need this and want this as much as I do. That's why I want to do this. That's why I am doing this, because I know that that's possible, and other people do too.
Well, what a beautiful way to end tonight. Wonderful conversation. Again, thank you so much for joining us tonight, Josephine Baird. We can catch you using commands, but if you would like to say in your own words where we can find you online and what's coming
Sure.
up, if you want to plug anything, please do.
Oh my goodness. Yes, you can find me. JosephineBaird.com is usually where you find most of my things. The novel is at Where It All Started, very grand title, whereitallstartednovel.com, and anywhere that you can find podcasts. It is Complicated with my dear host, Dr. J, is found at It Is Complicated at all places that are podcast related. There'll be another episode with you, dear Sam, and another guest, very exciting. And anytime you want to come on again, I hope we'll do many more. And things that are coming up, yeah, if you see me at GDC, come and listen to the talk and go, it's okay, go ahead. Something
It's going to
like
be
that.
amazing. I can't wait to hear how it all
Thank
goes.
you very much. Yeah, I think that's it.
Oh, we have requests for like lists of academic papers and things. I mean, your CV is knocking around as well. It's got to worry about some of my material
Yeah.
for tonight.
Yeah, the web,
So-
actually the website, I post everything on my
Yeah.
website because I want it to be open access. And if you're trawling for references, all of those are open access, and just skip what I've said and go down to the bibliography and just look through there, you'll find it. So yeah, and I'm happy. I'll post a bunch of stuff on Twitter and
yeah, and
anywhere
as I said, I'll be able to share that on the YouTube VOD when that goes up.
yeah, and I'm on Twitter for some strange reason still. That is a good place to catch me if you want to say hi.
I feel the same way. All my jobs come through Twitter. I mean, like a lot of my connections, I've been
know.
introduced to people through Twitter. Elon can take that off my cold dead hands. I've said it.
There's lovely queer people there, and so,
Yeah. We found each other. It's been amazing.
Yes, I know.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'll leave on that note again. Thank you very much for giving up your time this evening. And I'll see you soon with any luck. And I look forward to that podcast we did with one of my actual real life idols on it. So I did just about hold it together, the episode. So that was something else. And I'll let you get back to your evening. Thank you very much. And I'll
Thank
see
you for
around soon.
inviting me, and thank you to the mods as well for
Oh, the
everybody who's invited and made this happen.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
So that all that remains for me to say is thank you for watching tonight. That was super chill and fun and great, and we're going to do more of this. I'm off to Vegas. I'm off to Vegas. That's just a fact. I'm not a gambler. I'm going to the Dice Awards because Karlak and Astarin have been nominated, and they're finalists, but it's the same thing, for the it's like best character. What's it called again? Outstanding achievement in character. So it's very collaborative, and I'm not feeling any pressure at all because it's out of my hands. Thank you to a couple of people gifted subs. So sorry that your individual names aren't showing, but that seems to be the way that Stream Elements wants to run things. We are going to raid Theo Solomon. You might have heard of him. Plays this guy called Will in Baldur's Gate 3. Anyway, he's playing through the game. So we're going to do that now, if we can, if he's still going, I hope. And thank you to your generous donations to the Trans Empowerment Project. Thank you so much. It really makes a difference. Me and representatives from that charity are really grateful. So yeah, all that remains to say is thank you again. And I'll see you soon. We'll be back for the last 2 weeks of this charity drive, I suppose. For Life is Strange, True Colours. I got there in the end. There we go. That's great. Yes, please start the raid if we can do that. Yes, brilliant. Thank you so much. Bizu Josephine. I'll see you soon, and I'll see you lot in a week or so. 2 weeks. 2 weeks. Don't be here next week. I won't be here. Bye bye. Enjoy Theo.